Some stories begin with once upon a time. Others begin with a question no one should ever have to ask themselves. Why does he disappear every week? This is the story of an ordinary woman with a seemingly stable life, who decided to do what many others would never have the courage to do. When doubt becomes routine, love becomes anguish, and what should be a relationship of trust turns into a series of sleepless nights, unanswered messages and schedules that don't match up. She didn't want to be that woman who secretly checks her cell phone, who tries to smell a different perfume on his shirt, or who memorizes license plates just in case. But what can you do when all the signs are there, screaming for attention? When every Wednesday he needs to take care of something, and every Thursday he comes back more distant. Her name doesn't matter yet. What matters, for now, is the pain she carried. That kind of invisible, silent pain that eats away at you. From the inside, that feeling of being left out, ignored, replaced. Deep down, she knew it. But how do you face the truth when you still love them? How do you look someone in the eye and say, "I know you lie to me," when you still wish it was all just paranoia? In the first few months, she tried to find excuses for him. Maybe it's just work. He must be stressed, it'll pass. But it didn't. On the contrary, the frequency with which he disappeared began to increase. Every week, at almost the same time, he would disappear. His cell phone was turned off. No messages, no notice. When he returned, he would come back with excuses so well rehearsed that they sounded more like excerpts from a bad play. She started collecting excuses. "I went to visit my mum. The signal went out. I forgot the charger. A long meeting. I helped a friend." But his mum lived in another city, and she knew that. And no friend comes to her every week with urgent problems. On exactly the same days, their relationship hadn't been the same for a long time. But that's easy to say from the outside. Deep down, she still believed that things could be fixed. That he was just confused, lost, and pressured. She blamed herself for everything. She wondered if she had stopped being interesting, if she had gained weight, if she had said too much. She shrank herself to fit in with his indifference. And then something began to change. Pain gave way to distrust. Doubt turned to decision. She wanted to know. She needed to know. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her. About her sanity. About her self-esteem. It was on one of those Wednesdays that it all started. He left saying he was going to take care of some things. He was well dressed. He put on perfume. He spent a little extra time in front of the mirror. He left in a hurry, as he always did. But this time, she didn't sit around waiting for an answer that wouldn't come. This time, she got in the car and followed him. Her heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to rip out of her chest. Her hands were sweating. Her mind was screaming at her to give up, to go back, to pretend nothing was happening. But her body wouldn't listen. She needed the truth, even if it hurt. Even if it destroyed everything. She followed him for almost 20 minutes. First along the main avenue, then along a side street, until he entered a remote neighborhood where she had never been before. There, he parked in front of a house with a simple but well-kept facade. And he got out, calmly smiling, like someone who is going to meet someone they love. It was at that moment that she knew for sure that house held what he was hiding, or rather, who he was hiding. She watched from afar, her eyes filled with tears. The door opened. A woman appeared, young, beautiful, wearing short shorts and a white t-shirt. She welcomed him with a tight hug. Too long to be just friendship, too long to be casual. And then, the kiss. Time stopped for her there. The ground disappeared. Her chest tightened. Anger rose like an uncontrolled fire. But she didn't get out of the car. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just, cried in silence. In the solitude of someone who was betrayed, deceived and discarded without warning. She returned home with her soul in tatters, and she slept on the living room floor. Her mind was spinning like a whirlwind of questions. Who is she? How long has it been? And me? What have I been all this time? But this story doesn't end here. This was just the beginning. There was still so much to discover, so much more than she ever imagined. And what she did next will make you question how far someone will go for love or revenge. And now, tell me, if it were you, what would you do in her place? If this story touched you in any way, like the video, subscribe to the channel and comment below. Your opinion can make all the difference to someone who is going through the same thing.
Hi, my name is Susan. I'm 34 years old. And honestly, I never imagined I'd be telling my story like this. I've always been a discreet woman, reserved. One of those who prefers to hide her pain so as not to worry anyone. But there came a time when keeping everything in did me more harm than good. And now I think I need to get it out. Everything. That night, after I saw him enter the house, after I saw that kiss, I didn't scream. I didn't call him. I didn't knock on the door. I didn't do any of the things they say a betrayed woman does. I just froze. I watched my world fall apart from the backseat of a car. And the worst part is that even seeing everything, part of me still wanted to be wrong. Part of me wanted to believe that I was exaggerating, that maybe it was a misunderstanding, that maybe he had a twin brother or whatever. Anything that would explain that scene without destroying what little was left of me. But no, it was Rodrigo, my Rodrigo. The same man I shared an entire decade of my life with. The same man who said I love you to me before leaving for work. The same man who tucked my hair behind my ear and told me I was the woman of his life. The same man who needed to take care of things every Wednesday. I remember driving home with blurry eyes. The streetlights danced across the windshield like they were mocking me. And when I pulled up, the house felt emptier than ever. The silence screamed, and I sat on the living room floor, hugged my legs, and cried. I cried for everything. For the stupidity I'd been, for the woman I had failed to be, for the time I had wasted, for the Wednesdays I had believed his excuses. I didn't sleep that night. I also didn't cry after a certain point, when pain just becomes a hole, an emptiness where there used to be feeling. That's how the day dawned for me. I made coffee. I took a shower. I got dressed. And when Rodrigo walked through the door around 9 a.m, with his usual expression and the good morning kiss ready on his lips, I just looked at him. He noticed something. He asked if I was okay, and I lied. I said yes. But inside, a part of me had already died. A very important part. For the next few days, I kept pretending. I needed time to think, to understand, to decide what to do. And in the meantime, I observed every gesture, every message, every apology. I became a spectator of my own relationship, as if it were one of those bad soap operas that you can't stop watching. And then, without me expecting it, everything got worse. On Friday of that same week, I grabbed Rodrigo's cell phone while he was taking a shower. I was shaking. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I was afraid of the truth. And the truth was all there. Conversations with that woman, Mariana. Affectionate messages, photos, declarations, travel plans, ridiculous nicknames. And then the sentence that made me feel sick. She doesn't even suspect it. She's been in a routine for a long time. She is me, the woman who fell into a routine. The wife who became invisible. The woman who gave everything and received lies. I deleted the history on my phone, but not before sending myself screenshots of the conversations. I knew I would need that. Not just as proof, but as a reminder that I wasn't crazy. That all of this was real. Little by little, the pain turned to anger. The sadness turned to indignation. And the woman I thought had disappeared inside me began to return. Stronger, more determined. I didn't know exactly what I would do yet, but I knew I couldn't go on like this. One Sunday, I decided to look in the mirror. I really looked at myself for the first time in months, and I didn't like what I saw. Not because of my appearance, but because of my eyes, dull, tired, apathetic. I had lost myself trying to hold on to a perfect. I had let myself waste away waiting for the return of a man who had promised me something. And yet there, alone with that memory, I realized myself that it wouldn't end like this. On Monday, I left work early. I went to the neighborhood near where I am now. I didn't knock on his door. I didn't make a fuss. I just stayed in the car, watching. I saw her go out for a walk with a small dog, probably hers. She seemed happy, carefree, like someone living a secret and exciting romance. And somehow that image calmed me down, because right there in that moment, I understood that she wasn't the problem. She was just a consequence. The problem was him, Rodrigo, the man who swore eternal love to me while he built a parallel life. That night, I sat on the bed with him and asked, "Do you love me, Rodrigo?" He answered yes, without hesitation, as if it were still possible to lie by looking into my eyes. And then I understood. He never loved me like he said. Maybe he loved the idea of me, the woman who supported him, who took care of the house, who did his bidding. But true love doesn't disappear every week to kiss another man. In following guilt, I started to organize myself. I opened a separate account. I separated some documents. I started to prepare my plan. Because I'm not a woman who fights for a man. But I'm also not a woman who leaves the scene quietly. And the revenge that was taking shape in my mind wasn't just for what he did to me. It was for every woman who had been betrayed and disbelieved. For every time he had said I was going crazy. For every night I had cried in secret. I wanted him to feel what it was like to have the ground pulled out from under his feet. But wait, it wasn't the right time yet. I needed to wait, observe, and choose the right move. Because I didn't just want to finish him off. I wanted him to taste the destruction he had caused, to look back and see everything he had lost. And in that time, I discovered even more things. Things that took my breath away. Things that involved much more than a simple betrayal. The first time I thought about leaving home was that Monday, but there was something inside me that still resisted, not for him, but for myself. I wanted to leave with my head held high. I wanted to be sure that everything I had experienced, every pain, every lie, every absence, would not go unnoticed. I didn't want to be just another betrayed woman. I wanted to be the one who turned the tables. With each passing day, I became more observant. Rodrigo had no idea that I already knew everything. He continued with his act. With his mysterious exits, his occasional disappearances, his calculated affection. And the more he pretended, the more I prepared myself. I started putting together a small dossier, photos of Mariana's house, printouts of conversations, audio recordings of him stringing me along. Everything saved in a folder on my computer with a password. I wanted to document everything, as if the story needed proof to be told one day. Maybe I needed to show the world the kind of man he was. Or maybe I just wanted to make sure I would never forget what they did to me. The following Wednesday, as usual, he left. And I once again followed him. But this time, I parked closer. I could see their routine better. Mariana opened the door smiling. He entered as if he were arriving home. And after a few minutes, they both left together. They went to a simple restaurant, one of those with little tables on the sidewalk and yellowish lighting. They sat down holding hands. He laughed like he hadn't laughed with me in months. It was like seeing a stranger with my husband. And then the scene that broke my heart, he took a small box out of his pocket. He opened it. It was a ring. I don't know if it was an engagement ring, but it looked like one, Mariana was thrilled. They kissed, and I felt my stomach turn. He was offering a commitment to another woman while he was still sleeping with me, while he still shared the same house, the same bed, the same roof. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to leave him with the bitter taste of his own lie. I started getting closer to Mariana. I created a fake profile with a picture of a random woman from the internet. I sent a simple message. Do you know who he really sleeps with on Tuesdays? It took her 2 days to respond. When she did respond, it was with suspicion, and I understood. She was also being deceived in another way. Rodrigo hadn't told her he was married. He said he lived alone, that he had been married before, but it hadn't worked out, that now he wanted a new life, that she was his new beginning. Every word she said to me was a knife. Mariana was also being used, and that confused me. I didn't know whether to feel anger, pity, or empathy, but I knew that the real villain of the story was the same for both of us. I started planning a meeting, me and her, face to face, but it couldn't be just any old way. It had to be at the right time. Meanwhile, inside the house, I continued to act, preparing dinner, asking normal questions, forcing myself to touch on random subjects just to observe his reactions. Rodrigo seemed more and more at ease, as if he was truly convinced that everything was under control. Then one Friday night, he came home later than usual. He smelled of women's perfume. It wasn't mine. I recognized it immediately. It was a sweet, almost cloying floral scent. Mariana wore it. I knew because I had noticed it on their dates. So blatant, so reckless ... that it made me sick. When he fell asleep, I got up and started packing my things, little by little. A piece of clothing here, a document there, a book, a piece of jewelry. I didn't want him to notice, not yet. I wanted everything to be out of place when he woke up one day. The plan was simple. Set the stage, set the date, and get rid of it all except the evidence. Because what I would do next involved a lot more than saying goodbye. On Monday, Mariana finally agreed to meet. She said she wanted to understand what was going on. That something didn't add up. That Rodrigo was starting to show signs of inconsistency. I suggested we meet at a discreet cafe far from home. She agreed, and there in front of me she was, Mariana, the woman who stole the man who is no longer mine. But when she opened her mouth, I saw someone broken, deceived, manipulated. She cried. So did I, and the anger turned into something else. A shared pain, as if we were victims of the same nightmare, living different chapters of the same night. I told her everything. I showed her the photos, the screenshots, the dates. She was shocked. She said she never imagined it. That he talked about me as if we were like us. That I was crazy, obsessive, jealous. And then she understood. He was the problem. He was the liar, the manipulator, the actor. At that moment, we joined forces. Yes, 2 women betrayed by the same man, determined to get revenge. Not with violence, but with truth. We arranged a dinner. Mariana would invite him, a special dinner to celebrate the relationship, and he accepted immediately. He assured us he would be there, that he was looking forward to it, and he went. What he didn't know was that when he arrived, I would be there too. Sitting at the table with an envelope in my hands, he arrived smiling, confident, as always. When he saw me ... he froze. Surprise, I said. He sat down. He turned pale. Mariana was silent. And then I handed her the envelope with all the prints, the photos, the evidence, the truth. He didn't say a word. He just lowered his head. And I spoke. I told him everything. I told him how much it hurt me to know that he chose to cheat on me instead of talking to me. I told him that he was a coward, that he used 2 women as if they were disposable. I told him that he was not a man. He was just a character of himself. Mariana also spoke. She said that he deceived her, that she believed in a future that never existed. And then we both left together, leaving him there, alone, in the same void that he pushed us into for so long. That night, I slept at a friend's house. The next day, I went home. Rodrigo was no longer there. He had left early, and I took the opportunity to finish tidying up. I left the keys. A note with just 3 words, "Now it's your turn." After that night, something changed inside me. I felt like I had regained control, but it was a strange, almost uncomfortable feeling. It was as if by exposing everything, I had opened a door that I could never close again. I knew my life would never be the same. The next day, I woke up early. The silence in the house hit me in a way I hadn't expected. Rodrigo was no longer there. His room was empty, his bed was unmade, his belongings were out of place. It was as if he had taken away not only his things, but also a piece of what I believed to be our world. I sat in the living room, the note in my hand, those 3 words, so simple and yet so weighty. Now it's your turn. Was it a provocation? A farewell or a veiled threat? I didn't know, but I didn't care. I needed to think about my next move. In the morning, I called Mariana. I wanted to talk. I needed to understand how she was feeling. She was as lost as I was, but there was something different in her voice, a mix of sadness and strength that surprised me. We talked for hours, sharing fears, pains, and oddly enough, plans. We decided that we would not remain silent, that we would tell our story. Not as victims, but as women who stand up, who face up, who do not let themselves be destroyed by a man's betrayal. It was time to show that he had no power over us. I started writing a diary, a story that was real, raw, and uncut. For me, for Mariana, for whoever wanted to listen, because I knew that behind every story of betrayal, there is a universe of silent pain, doubts, humiliation, and also of courage. Meanwhile, life went on. Returning to work was a challenge. Finding the strength to face people, to smile, to pretend to be normal took more than I could have imagined. Every look, every comment, every question about my condition stirred up a storm inside me. I wanted to respond, scream, tell them everything, but I chose silence. For now, Rodrigo didn't look for me, not a message, not a call. His emptiness was a reflection of the emptiness he had left behind. I felt anger, sadness, relief, and fear all at the same time. Fear of what would come, fear of what I would do, fear of what I might yet discover. However, some things started to surface. Documents in my name that he had moved without my consent. Debts I was unaware of, contracts signed in our names. He had set the stage for a clean getaway, leaving me to bear the brunt of the consequences. It was then that I realized that it would not only be an emotional battle, but also a bureaucratic war. I needed help. I sought out a lawyer, explained the whole situation, and discovered that betrayed women often face more difficulties than they imagine. Justice is not always quick, nor is it always fair. Over the weeks, Mariana and I continued exchanging messages, exchanging strength. She decided to move away from Rodrigo for good, and I began to think about starting my life over without him. The divorce process would be long, painful, and full of surprises, none of them good. And in the midst of all this, I still had to deal with my own ghosts. The lonely nights, the hidden tears, the moments of weakness that I tried to hide. I thought about what was, what could have been, what would never be. Questions that had no answers and maybe never would. But that's life, moving on. With each passing day, I became a little stronger. I learned that loving myself was the first step to rebuilding everything he destroyed. And as much as it hurts to admit, that betrayal that seemed like the end became the beginning of something bigger, the reunion with myself. The days that followed our meeting with Mariano were a mixture of hope and despair. I felt that I was finally beginning to free myself from the invisible prison that betrayal had created around me. But the truth is that the path to healing is tortuous and full of traps. Rodrigo hadn't disappeared completely. Even though he'd left home, his messages wouldn't stop. Empty messages, apologies that sounded like theater, promises he never intended to keep. Each of those messages was a knife stuck in my chest, a clear reminder of everything he'd destroyed. I read those words like someone reading a pre-written script, knowing the emotions behind them were thick. And yet, in those weak moments, I still wished he was real. I wanted to believe there was a chance for us. I wanted to believe that love could overcome lies, but the reality was different. And I knew it. At work, my head was racing. I could hardly concentrate. Every sound, every look, every sigh seemed amplified, as if I were living inside a movie where I didn't know the plot. The nights were even worse. Sleeping was a constant challenge. I would close my eyes and see Rodrigo and Mariana together, sharing moments that I had dreamed were just mine. And in the midst of this whirlwind, an unexpected proposal came up. Rodrigo wanted to talk in person. He asked to meet me at a discreet cafe, far from home. I hesitated, but deep down I knew I needed to hear what he had to say. Maybe it would be the last chapter of this story. On the day of the meeting, my heart was beating fast. I dressed carefully, trying to hide the pain that was overflowing. I arrived early and chose a table that allowed me to see the door. When he walked in, my stomach tightened. Rodrigo was different. He was thinner, his eyes were tired, his smile forced. He sat down in front of me and began to talk. He spoke of regret, of guilt, of a double life he could no longer sustain. He said he loved me, that he had made a mistake, and that he wanted to make amends. I listened to it all in an almost cruel silence. I didn't know if he deserved my forgiveness or my contempt. When it was over, I asked a simple question. Why, Rodrigo? Why did you do this to me? He hesitated, looked down, and whispered, I don't know, I was lost. That answer broke me, and at the same time made me realize something important. He didn't deserve any more of my tears. He wasn't the man I loved. He was a stranger who destroyed everything he touched. I left that cafe with a strange feeling, as if I had buried a part of the past that still hurt, but that needed to be left behind. I went back home and found Mariana. She was there, waiting. We talked at length about our feelings, about the mess that man had left in our lives. We decided that the best way to overcome everything was to move forward, each on our own path, without resentment, but with the certainty that we deserved more. But life, as always, likes to play tricks. A few days later, I received an anonymous phone call. On the other end of the line, a voice I didn't recognize began telling me things I never imagined I would hear. Secrets about Rodrigo that went far beyond betrayal. Lies, hidden debts, a parallel life that he kept away from us both. That phone call was a shock, an earthquake that shook the foundations of what I believed I knew. And at the same time, was the spark that lit the flame of justice within me. It wouldn't just be a matter of heartbreak, it would be a matter of survival. I started gathering all the evidence, the messages, the recordings, everything that could show the naked truth. I hired a lawyer to start the divorce process and to hold Rodrigo accountable for all the consequences of his actions. With each passing day, I felt stronger. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved to be happy. I deserved respect. I deserved to start over. And so, between tears and smiles, between good days and bad, I began to write a new chapter of my life. a chapter where I was the protagonist, not the victim. After the legal proceedings began, my routine became chaotic. It was difficult to balance work, emotions, and paperwork. Rodrigo, on the other hand, seemed distant, almost oblivious to the hurricane he had caused. I received news from him through third parties, cold messages, veiled threats disguised as attempts at reconciliation. That was when I realized that he had not only betrayed me, but that he was also trying to manipulate me. Mariana continued to be my unexpected support. We talked daily, exchanging experiences, sharing pain and strength. It was strange how two women, who could have been enemies, became allies in a battle neither of them had chosen. This taught me that betrayal is not just a story between two people, but fertile ground for the courage of those who decide to stand up again. In court, the first few meetings were difficult. Hearing Rodrigo deny, justify, and make up stories was like reliving everything all over again. I cried, felt angry, and wanted to give up, but I had to keep going. For myself, for my future, the lawyer guided me and gave me strength, and I clung to the idea that justice, even if slow, existed. At the same time, I started taking better care of myself. I went to therapy, started exercising again, and rediscovered hobbies that I had abandoned. I discovered a woman who existed beyond the betrayed wife, beyond the victim. I discovered that I could still smile without fear. One of those days, Mariana told me that Rodrigo had tried to get close to her again, offering false promises and trying to use her to get to me. That was a turning point for us. We decided that our union would be our final strength. Together, strengthened, we would face him until the end. At a particularly difficult time, I received a message from him saying that he regretted it and wanted a fresh start, but I already knew that there was no more room for him in my life. I deserved someone who respected me and was honest with me. In between comings and goings, I discovered other lies that Rodrigo carried. Secret accounts, hidden debts, people who harmed and non-honest with us. It was more than betrayal. It was deception and manipulation on several layers. At that moment, it wasn't just a matter of heartbreak, but of justice for myself and all the people he had wronged. Despite everything, the days passed, and I learned that forgiveness is not about forgetting, but about freeing yourself from the pain, and I was ready to free myself. In the following months, my life took a turn I never imagined. Between the lawsuits, the conversations with Mariana, and the rebuilding of myself, I felt the strength I needed to leave behind everything that man had caused me. But the road was still not free of rocks. Rodrigo tried everything to destabilize me. He sent insinuating messages, called at inappropriate times, and tried to make me doubt my own decisions. However, I have found within myself the courage that he never knew how to give me. I ignored his provocations, stayed focused, and continued. With the divorce process, Mariana and I strengthened an unlikely friendship. We began to support each other, sharing not only our pain, but also our hopes and dreams of a new beginning. It was curious how betrayal, which could have pitted us against each other, brought us together in a way I never imagined possible. It was during one of these conversations that I discovered that Rodrigo was trying to cheat the system. He was trying to hide assets, create false documents, and even threaten witnesses who might testify against him. This made me realize how dangerous he really was. He was not only a traitor, but a manipulator who would stop at nothing to avoid consequences. My lawyers stressed the importance of staying calm and patient. Although justice seemed slow, I knew that time was on my side. Each document submitted, each hearing attended, was a silent victory against betrayal and lies. On nights when loneliness hit me hard, I remembered the good times we had. Not to fool myself, but to understand that I wasn't to blame for his failure. That the love I gave him was true, and that he deserved something better. I started going out more, getting back into the social circle. I started going out with friends again, laughing, having fun. Little by little, the fear of being alone began to diminish, and in its place came a certainty. I was ready to be happy, with or without him. Until one day, I received news that shook me. Rodrigo had started dating someone else. It wasn't Mariana. It was someone new. Someone he probably believed wouldn't know about his past. I could have felt anger, jealousy, hatred, but I felt only sadness and compassion. He kept living one lie after another, as if he were invincible, but I knew that every lie has an end. And my end with him had been written a long time ago. I continued to stay strong in the process, taking care of myself, strengthening myself. And although the pain of betrayal never completely disappeared, I learned to live with it without letting it define me. Every day that passes, I am more aware of my worth. I don't need anyone who doesn't respect me. I don't need a love that isn't true. And it was at that moment that I realized the real betrayal was not his betrayal of me, but the betrayal I almost committed against myself by staying in a place that was not good for me. Today, I am grateful for having had the courage to move forward, for having found support where I least expected it, for having discovered the strong woman that has always been inside me. And that's my message to you who are watching. Don't be afraid to start over, to put yourself first, to choose your happiness always. That phase in which everything seemed to finally stabilize was also the moment in which I realized that the scar left by Rodrigo was still deep, not only because of the betrayal itself, but because of what it awakened within me, doubts, insecurities, and a constant feeling of alertness that accompanied me even in moments of apparent peace. I wondered, how could I trust again? How could I open my heart without fear? Every step forward was accompanied by an invisible fear that told me to retreat. And even surrounded by friends and a new routine, I felt the loneliness of someone who has lived a lie for so long. It was then that I decided I needed to seek professional help. I started therapy. At first, it was difficult to open up all those wounds, revisit every detail of the story, every conversation, every look that I had previously let slip by. But over time, I realized that this was the only way to free myself from the past. Talking to my therapist, I discovered that betrayal is not just about the other person, but about the loss of our own security. That I had not only lost a husband, but also my confidence in myself and in life. And that, in order to rebuild everything, I needed to learn to love myself more, to respect myself more, to set limits. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings continued. At each hearing, I felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. Rodrigo tried to defend himself, lie, and blur the truth. But the evidence was against him, and that gave me the strength to carry on. Mariana and I maintained our alliance, a rare and strong bond. We talked about the future, about what to expect from then on. She had found a new job and was looking to start over, far from that dark past. I was also starting to plan my life. Without Rodrigo, with dreams that had previously been stifled by routine and pain. One of those days, I received an unexpected invitation, a charity event in the city, organized by a longtime friend. I hesitated, but I accepted. It was the opportunity to allow myself to live again, to show myself that I could be happy and fulfilled. At the event, I met new people, friendly faces, and a welcoming environment. It was the first time in a long time that I felt a real smile appear on my face. There, I realized that my story, as painful as it was, did not define me, that I was not trying to betray him, Rodrigo. He kept trying to get to me through indirect means, but I learned to close the doors to him, to not let his shadows dominate my life. Today, as I write, I felt that the road to healing, but that the road to healing is long. that scars will remain, but that they do not stop me from being who I am. And that, more than anything, I am the owner of my own story. This is my truth, my fight, my victory. The day had come when everything I had kept, felt, and fought for finally had to come to an end. The divorce process was close to being concluded, and the feeling was a mixture of relief and fear. Relief for officially freeing myself from that relationship that had hurt me so much. Fear for what would come next, an uncertain future without the certainties, even bad ones, of the past. Over the months, I found myself again. I discovered a Susan I never knew existed, a strong, determined woman who could pick herself up, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. But I also realized that there were scars and visible marks that would take time to heal, if they ever healed at all. Mariana and I remained united partners in this journey. She moved to another city, started her life over, and whenever we could, we talked, sharing our victories and challenges. Our story, as painful as it was, gave us unexpected strength. Rodrigo, he disappeared from my life. No contact, no attempts to recover what he had destroyed. And I understood that he never deserved a place in my heart, nor in my future. But the biggest twist in this story happened when I received an anonymous letter. It was a simple note, but with words that made me reflect deeply. Not every betrayal is the end. Sometimes it is the beginning of who we really are. That sentence stayed with me for days, because despite everything, I didn't want this story to end as a tale of pain and sorrow. I wanted it to be a lesson, a learning experience, a warning to anyone going through the same thing. I realized that betrayal, as devastating as it is, can be a turning point. That pain can be transformed into strength. That the end of a relationship doesn't have to be the end of our happiness. Today, I am proud to say that I am free. Free from lies, from disappointments, from false loves. Free to love again, myself, first and foremost. And for you who are listening to this story, I leave you with a question. What would you do if you discovered that everything you believed in was a lie? Would you have the courage to move on? To get back up and start over? I did. And I can assure you, it's difficult, it's painful, but it's possible. And life, despite everything, can be wonderful when we give ourselves the chance to be happy. Tell me in the comments, what was the biggest lesson you learned from this story? Have you ever been through something similar? Let's talk and support each other. If you liked the story, leave a like, share it so that other people can be inspired. And subscribe to the channel to follow other real stories of overcoming